It might or might not surprise you that nearly every couple I have married in recent times, and nearly every couple I will marry this year, met each other online or through a dating app installed on their mobile phones. Now, I can assure you I have no personal experience in this area. However, when researching this homily, I discovered that there are somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 different dating sites available in Australia. From the spiritually focused, like CatholicMatch.com, to the physically focused, like Bristler, which is for those who are only interested in men with beards. Who am I to judge? Now, given this vast sea of humanity looking for love, I was thinking of how hard it must be to stand out from the crowd. How important it must be to make a first good digital impression. For it is natural for us to want to be popular. It's a nice feeling to win the approval of others. The question is, to what extent in this world of digitality and virtual reality are we actually free just to be ourselves? Are we conditioned just to play it safe, only to put a best foot forward even though we know it's not quite true? Say what we think the others will want to hear, such that we will then be embraced by the crowd. Might this temptation to superficiality, and perhaps on certain levels that little bit of dishonesty, perhaps at least in a small way, that explains why so many relationships break down once the romance wears off? What if there was a dating app where the first thing you had to reveal was the truth about your faults and failures? Maybe it's a business venture, perhaps not. Well, in the early part of the 20th century, a 43-year-old German policeman, after years and years and years of trying to search for the perfect wife, putting the best foot forward, being Prince Charming, thinking that all hope was lost, decided he'd take out a singles ad in a local newspaper. And to reiterate, I'm no expert on this front. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what the man wrote, I don't think popularity was his goal. You be the judge. This is what he wrote. Middle-ranking civil servant, single, Catholic, 43 years old, immaculate past from the countryside, is looking for a good Catholic pure girl who can cook well, do all the housework, with a talent for sewing and cooking, with a view to marriage as soon as possible. Personal fortune is desirable, but not a precondition. Responses to the following mail address as soon as possible. Now, putting aside what we might think about the complete absence of any romantic sentiment, at least by contemporary standards, but at the very least, 10 points for bluntness and sincerity, and just laying the fact your chauvinism by contemporary standards is there. Well, it might surprise you to hear that one lady did respond. A 36-year-old woman named Maria. And they decided to meet in a coffee house in Regensburg. The next day they were engaged. 4 months later they were married. And 6 years later they gave birth to their third child, Joseph Ratzinger, now known as Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. Today's second reading is all about love. And as you probably know, it's a very popular reading. Popular because it says all the sorts of really wonderful and attractive things that no one would ever disagree with. Love is always patient and kind. It is never jealous. Love is never boastful or conceited. popular sentiments. But there is one line in that same reading that I think is easily and perhaps readily overlooked. Love takes no pleasure in other people's sins, but delights only in the truth. Love delights in the truth. That is the critical point. It is never love. It is never compassionate. It is never merciful just to tell people what you think they want to hear, or to hide the truth just because you don't want to offend them, or to deny the fear of the truth just because you think you're making their life easy. The reading does not say love delights in being popular, or that love delights in making people feel good, or that love is just about letting people do what they want. It says none of that, because such things are not love. They are actually the recipe for moral chaos and relational breakdown. Love delights in the truth. That is to say, love delights in the hard reality. Love delights in the objectivity of how God sees things, not how we might like them to be or want them to be. Our Lord had no interest in popularity or appeasement. He who was and is love itself delights only in the truth. And today's gospel is a quintessential example. At the start, he reads a very beautiful and inspiring passage from the prophet Isaiah. And he gives the people encouragement, saying to them, this prophecy is being fulfilled today for you, as you hear it said. And we are told that Jesus won the approval of all, and they were astonished by the gracious words that came from his lips. But then he continues to speak, and he speaks the truth about the state of their hearts. He brings to the surface their arrogance and lack of humility. And he explains how God throughout history doesn't reveal himself to the arrogant and those who have no sense of who they really are. God goes to the marginalized first. There were plenty of widows in Israel, but Elijah was sent to a widow in a Sidonian town. There were plenty of lepers in Israel, but it was the Syrian Naaman who was cured. Now, all that he said was true, but how do the people in the synagogue react? Well, the same people that moments before who were adoring him for his words now want to throw him off the top of a cliff because they didn't want to be personally challenged. It's painful to hear the truth, but it's the truth. Now, in my more impertinent moments, I have repeated the following words to members of the hierarchy, but I think it really applies to us all. Those who tell you the truth are the ones who really love you. Those who tell you what you want to hear only love themselves. Nowhere is this more important than in our Catholic faith. The faith is beautiful, but because it is the faith of Jesus Christ, the truth will challenge us. It will offend our comfortable sensibilities, and it will be unpopular because it beckons us to be better. Change is hard. So you and I must be wary of the allure of popularity, thinking falsely that it will make life easier. You and I must remember how capricious and fickle popularity is, because it can change in the space of a conversation. Instead, hold fast to the one thing that never changes: the truth. Commit to the truth, delight in the truth, and you will always persevere in love.